Yahoo Sports Daily. Happy Wednesday. I'm Caroline Fenton. He is Jay Busbee in for Jason Fitz today. Busbee, it is great to have you in the saddle for so many reasons, but one of them being you have boots on the ground in the ATL. You were out at Falcons practice yesterday, and there was one person specifically at Falcons practice yesterday who was swaggy walking a little bit more, who's going to be coming in with some brand new shoes, brand new clothes, maybe a nice new car, because his bank account is much fatter today than it was just a couple of days ago. And that is Bijan Robinson, who just signed a 3-year extension worth up to $71 million, a record for a running back that also includes more than $50 million of guarantees. So you were there, Busby. You got to experience the good vibes at Falcons camp yesterday. What exactly were the vibes there? What was the mood now that Bijan Robinson, one of the top young running backs in the NFL, could participate fully?
Oh, it was tremendous. He's handing out $100 bills to everybody. But I got $500 from him. It was great. It was wonderful. No, in
It's like
all
Oprah.
seriousness,
You
yeah,
get money. You get
exactly.
money.
That's right. Yeah, you've got a new car waiting under your chairs too. No, he was. It was it was probably projection on my part, but he's doing his workouts and knees seemed to kick a little higher. He was not participating in most of the on-field action. They're very much trying to bring him in because of his hold in. They're very much trying to bring along slowly, make sure he doesn't get injured. And that was the big issue, actually, that took away a lot from the Falcons' joy at having him back in camp was the injury to Jalen Walker, potential torn ACL, potentially lost for the season, a huge blow for the Falcons' defense. And that kind of happened at the end of practice yesterday. But before that, everybody was all smiles. Tua Tagovailoa calls him amazing. And new head coach Kevin Stefanski absolutely loves Bijan, telling all kinds of stories about him. So this is one of the most impact players in the NFL, an elite player. He's in the Falcons' house, and he's going to be there for a while, obviously. That's great news for Atlanta.
Absolutely great news for Atlanta. Great news for Falcons fans. Great news for Jahmyr Gibbs as well, which we will get to in just one moment. But sticking in Atlanta, the Falcons have now committed to 4 core pieces offensively. Bijan Robinson, obviously, with that big deal. You got Drake London, who was just secured this past offseason, Kyle Pitts, and also guard Matthew Bergeron. There's still a lot of questions at quarterback, Busby, and I do believe that the Falcons could be just an average, serviceable quarterback away from being competitive. It's a wide open division. You have one of the best young receivers in the NFL, paired with Bijan Robinson, who can do literally everything. And while Kyle Pitts, I don't think, has answered the bell in terms of his draft stock, where he was drafted, all of the pre draft hype, Kyle Pitts is still a reliable tight end in this league. So, are they not even going to get a solid return on all of the investments that they've made this past offseason because they just don't have an answer at the quarterback position?
Well, I'll tell you what, Matt Ryan is the president of football operations for the Falcons, obviously MVP. You remember him from days gone by. He's out there practicing with the receivers yesterday. He's zipping passes to them, and you look at that and you're like, has he got another year in him? Maybe. He looks good. Obviously, Stefanski said no. Matt Ryan is not coming back. And you're right. It all pivots
Never
around the
say never.
quarterback position. Yeah, exactly. Is it going to be Tua? Is it going to be Michael Penix Jr.? Is it going to be somebody else? Neither of these two. That's the tricky part. And in terms of return on the investment, yes, you're right. They have to get something out of this huge core that they have set up. They've got to get something out of the quarterback position to maximize that. The problem is that when you've got 2 quarterbacks who are both often injured, you might end up with consistency or you might end up with them both being injured at the same time. And that's what the Falcons are going to be gambling all year long on is that they will be able to get one of these 2 guys healthy. They're saying all the right things, but saying and being under center are 2 very different things.
But that's even just the first question that needs to be answered is when both of these guys, either of these guys between Michael Penix Jr. and Tua Tagovailoa can get healthy. The second question, which is maybe even the more important question, the more pressing question is, Are either of those guys legitimately starting quarterbacks in the National Football League? Are either of those
Yes.
guys able to take advantage of all of those weapons offensively? Are either of those guys able to take advantage of what feels like a wide open division in the NFC South and actually piece together an above 500 season that may or may not come in the form of a postseason berth? Because those weapons, those are postseason weapons, but not a postseason quarterback situation. Are there any rumblings, any sense, any feeling within the Falcons organization of either one of these guys that could be available or either one of these guys that the coaching staff wants to take the starting job?
It seems like just this is purely vibes based, but it seems like Tua has a bit of the edge in terms of his veteran ability, the fact that he's played well. You know, to be honest, he's played well in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He was on the winning end of that 2nd and 26 way back when as a freshman at Alabama. But he seems to have a bit of the edge. But obviously, the Falcons have put a lot of their hope, a lot of their faith, a lot of their future in Michael Penix Jr. So it's going to be a bit of a legitimate quarterback competition battle, and we'll have to see going forward. Are either of these two guys going to take the Falcons to the postseason? As you mentioned, the good news is that they're playing in a division where that's possible. You know, if they had won one more game last season, if they hadn't blown a game against the Jets last season, they would have been in the postseason. Now, once you get there, that's a whole different story. But for Atlanta, which hasn't been to the postseason since the Matt Ryan days back in the 2010s, that's what they're looking to get to.
Has it been that long?
It has. It has. Other than the Jets, who we've already beat up on, what, 3 times this show? We're only 10 minutes in.
The less than 10 minutes
longest,
in.
Yeah, exactly. And the Falcons have the longest postseason drought of any team.
Jeez, I feel like I probably knew that. It's just hearing it sounds so astonishing. And I
Yeah,
think the
yeah.
Falcons are in a difficult position because I think that being terrible, like the Jets, it's one thing, right? Because you know what to expect. You know that if you're bad enough, that you will be swinging distance in getting maybe your quarterback of the future, or a really good impact player at the top of the draft. Now, the Jets have been drafting at the top of the draft and still haven't found that guy. But hey, what's another crack at the apple? But at least if you're bad enough, you have something to look forward to in the upcoming NFL draft. And if you're good, well, then great. You make the playoffs. Making the playoffs is fun. Winning games is fun. That's why you do this, is to win football games. But I think the worst place to be maybe is hovering right around the mucky middle. You're
Yes.
8-9, you're 9-8, you're, winning enough games to be interesting, but not winning enough games to actually be good and to actually be competitive. And with the weapons that the Falcons have, just offensively, just looking on that side of the ball, the Falcons have enough to be that, in every game or in a majority of the games that you're going to play, interesting enough that you're a conversation piece and you have a little bit of hope. But without the quarterback, I just can't buy in that they're going to be so good that they'll be able to finally get over the hump. So, and then
Yeah.
also they're not going to be bad enough to find their quarterback of the future in this upcoming draft. If they want to find their quarterback of the future in this upcoming draft, then they're going to have to trade away some serious, legitimate, tangible draft capital in order to do so. So I hate to say it for your hometown team, Busby, but I think the Falcons may just be, mucking along in the worst possible place that you can be in the National Football League, and that is smack dab right in the middle.
It is the hope that kills you, and that's what the Falcons give their fans every year, a dose of hope, and then they take it away. They beat the Bills last year. They beat the Rams last year. This is the kind of thing where Atlanta plays well enough to win and then loses the games that they should run away with. So, yes, that is probably more talk about the Falcons that we need to have for the rest of the season until they prove themselves. But yes, that's exactly where they're stuck, is in that mucky middle.
Before we move on from the Falcons talk, just curious, people in Atlanta, the people within the Falcons organization, who do they view as the biggest threat in the NFC South?
I mean, the threat, I guess, is probably, I don't know, because all 3 teams kind of live in the Falcons' brain. The Saints, obviously, most of all, that rivalry goes back to the 60s. The Buccaneers seem to just stomp on Atlanta regularly, and then the Panthers have a way of just absolutely cutting Atlanta out at the knees when Atlanta is feeling their best. So All three of them have different take up different residencies in the Falcons' heads. But I think it would probably be the Bucs if most people were thinking right now in terms of this season, this environment right now.
I don't entirely disagree, but the NFC South is a fascinating division. Not full of the best football that we're going to have in the
No,
NFL, but it is a fascinating one. I mean, I
it's the
believe
closest
the
to yeah.
yeah, go
It's
ahead.
I'm sorry. It's the closest to college football that we have in the NFL. In that it might not be the most artful football, but the fans are lunatics. They're a little bit unhinged. They're a little bit too attached to their teams. The rivalries get a little bit too ugly. So if there is a crossover between college football and pro football, it happens in the NFC South.
A Falcons Saints rivalry, I think, is the closest to an SEC rivalry that you're going to get
Yes.
in the NFL.
Yes.
But I believe the Bucks have the highest over/under win total at 8.5. The Falcons have the lowest at 6.5. We're talking 2 games that separate the projected number one from the projected, last place team in the NFC South. But as we mentioned, Bijan Robinson inks that massive deal, the most lucrative contract to ever for a running back in the NFL. So now all eyes turn to the next guy who's likely to get the most lucrative contract for any running back in the NFL, and that is Jahmyr Gibbs. His hold-in remains in place at Lions camp. The vibes doesn't feel like it, and all reports say that the vibes aren't as positive as they were maybe with Bijan Robinson and the Falcons. And Lions head coach Dan Campbell said Bijan's deal will not hurt their negotiations with Jahmyr Gibbs. Are you sure about that? Are you buying that?
You sure about that?
It's not going to hurt from Jahmyr Gibbs' side. He's going to be very, very happy with this. So is Jonathan Taylor, who's an unrestricted free agent next year. He was very excited to hear about this deal because all of a sudden, when Bijan is up here, that means that all the other running backs who are at the elite level get to move up. So, yeah, I think that the Lions realize that maybe they're going to have to pay a little bit more. I think they'll get it done at some point. But, yeah, it might squeeze a little more. It's going to be better news for Gibbs and for any of the other of these elite running backs who want to claim this kind of money, which is what they need to do. What they earn it, they work for it, and they're going to get paid it.
I don't think that the Bijan Robinson deal is going to drastically change things for Jahmyr Gibbs and the Lions. Because if Jahmyr Gibbs and the Lions were negotiating a contract that was so far off of what Bijan Robinson got, then that's just in bad faith for Jahmyr Gibbs. So I think that Jahmyr Gibbs might get a little extra on the top, maybe $1 million more guaranteed, which, we talk about as chump change in the NFL, but is $1 million, let's not forget. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions just try and sweeten the pot a little bit just so Jahmyr Gibbs can say that he has the most lucrative contract at that position. But I don't think that this is necessarily going to totally derail things because I do expect that whatever Bijan Robinson got was within the wheelhouse of what Jahmyr Gibbs and what the Lions were negotiating. But let me just say, good for the running backs, because it feels like this total and complete fallacy of this being an undervalued position is over. I remember back to, the summer of 2023, when Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs and so many of these running backs in the NFL, they hopped on a Zoom call to talk about what in the world is happening to the running back market, that running backs weren't being drafted very highly. Running backs weren't getting incredibly lucrative contracts. Running backs were, kind of just being let go to walk in free agency. And I was kind of looking around thinking, in 2022, Josh Jacobs had a 1,600-yard season. Derrick Henry had a 1,500-yard season with the Tennessee Titans. The running backs were still valuable to these teams. They just weren't being paid as such. So I'm glad that was short-lived, because I think we can look around at the landscape of the NFL and acknowledge how important these players, this position is to their respective teams. Why do I feel so much more confident about this version of the Chiefs than last year's version? Well, they have Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl MVP. How invaluable Jahmyr Gibbs is to the Lions, how invaluable Bijan Robinson is to what the Falcons want to do offensively. So good for the running backs for finally getting paid what they deserve.
Absolutely. I agree. The running backs have always been kind of seen as a disposable position, which is unfair on a number of levels. But when you realize the difference between an average running back and an elite running back, yeah, they deserve that extra cut, and they're getting it now.
And Bijan was not the only player to land a nice big deal yesterday. Ravens wide receiver Zay Flowers secured a 4-year, $140 million extension. 108 of that is guaranteed. Do you like this move for the Ravens?
I think I do, because the Ravens are in a crucial season right now. They are leading the AFC North in terms of expected wins. Over-unders 11.5 for them. So there's a lot of expectation, but they're also at kind of a crisis point for this franchise. You know, Lamar Jackson, you're wondering what he has left in the tank still at the elite level. You're wondering about the new regime coming in with Jesse Minter, how that's going to work. Is it going to be primarily a defensive-focused team now going forward? The AFC North, like the NFC South, is a winnable division. The question is, are the Ravens going to be able to take full advantage of it? Having Zay Flowers under contract, having him out there running routes and causing havoc for defenses, that's exactly what Baltimore needs. This is a key piece that's locked down, and Baltimore can move forward and look to the future and hope that things are going to be a little bit better than they were last season.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely the right move for the Ravens. Is Zay Flowers one of those elite top-of-the-league receivers? No, he's not the Jamar Chase, the Justin Jefferson, the CeeDee Lamb, the Devontae Smith, the A.J. Brown kind of rarefied air. But what Zay Flowers is their number one go-to elite receiver. I mean, Zay Flowers hasn't had a single year in Baltimore where he wasn't the leading receiver on that team. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. What has kind of the old adage been about Lamar Jackson? Well, he has to do everything himself. He doesn't have enough help around him. Well, locking down Zay Flowers kind of acknowledges that we're going to make sure that we keep these pieces in place surrounding Lamar Jackson. I also think it's smart for the Ravens to go ahead and get ahead of this extension and not let the wide receiver market balloon even more than it already has. Get this deal done early. Get this deal done going into year 4 versus, in the 11th hour, a la Jerry Jones style, where they're going to have to pay for waiting. So good on Zay Flowers and good on the Ravens for locking down their guy. You, as in fantasy managers, are going to lock down your guys very soon, since fantasy football drafts open soon. So coming up next, Josh Norris will join us to break down all things fantasy football.
And I had that moment there at the World Cup a few minutes before we went out and realized, oh my God, 30 plus years, all the amazing events that I've been able to be part of, including my beloved UFC, now culminates into this moment where it's the biggest sporting event and the biggest sports stage in the world. And I'm part of this? Wow.
Sharks down 10. 3rd down and 10 from the 19. Edwards steps up. Now he's in trouble. And Edwards sacked. Back at the 17. And once again, it's Devontae O'Malley. And flipped into the end zone. Touchdown. A thing of beauty. DeLaurent for Murray with a late pitch over the top, end over end, and a Pirates touchdown.
Darian Mensah was not the only player who left Duke that day to go to Miami. His best receiver, Cooper Marquette, went with him. He was the best receiver in the Ivy League at Harvard in 2024. He graduates from Harvard. He hops in the portal, goes to Duke, and has 1,100 receiving yards at Duke last year. Well, now he goes to Miami.
Harvard to Miami. How can you not love this sport right now? This is fantastic.
Still Barnes in there. No Jared Ware on this drive yet. Roberts against the blitz. Goes to the end zone for Keon Williams. Easy as you like. 16-yard touchdown.
There's Keon Williams. Tried to go to him in the last drive on that 4th down play to the end zone. Good defense by Orlando, but that time able to shake free to the corner.
There's one glaring flaw in Zay Flowers' fantasy profile that has kept him out of the top 10 wide receivers in points per game, but Declan Doyle coming in might be the perfect time for that to change. And if it does, Zay's wide receiver 17 price tag pays off in a big way. That coming in from our very own Yahoo Fantasy Football analyst, Josh Norris, co-host of the Yahoo Fantasy Football with Josh and Hayden, who joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us, Josh, and welcome in to Yahoo Sports Daily. We're happy to have you. So we had Zay Flowers get paid yesterday. What needs to change this season for him to have that breakout fantasy season?
It simply put, it's red zone opportunities. So over the last 2 seasons, just 17 red zone targets for Zay Flowers. In fact, Olamide Zaccheaus had more red zone targets and touchdowns last season for Zay Flowers. That doesn't add up when you think about trying to get your best players the ball in the most critical areas of the field. Todd Monken, built his red zone passing game around the likes of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Obviously, you have Lamar Jackson and definitely Derrick Henry running the football. But in order for Zay Flowers to really pay off as an early 4th round pick, he does just have to do what he did last year. But in order to, finally reach that top 10 fantasy points per game status that we all hopefully believe he can and, has the skills to do it, it is simply maybe even doubling that opportunity and, creating and diagramming opportunities to get him some real touchdown opportunities, because he needs to hit about that 10 touchdown mark in order to get there.
Josh, every time that I'm talking to one of our wonderful fantasy analysts, I really wish that I could have the conversation, privately or by text, so that all of my fellow owners would not get in on all of these great tips. But I am told that I have to ask this publicly now, so I will go ahead. Other than Zay Flowers, what are some other wide receivers that you think might be flying under the radar? Everyone knows the big names. Who are some other receivers that you think people ought to be targeting for their second or third wide receiver slot?
Love that. Christian Watson would be one for me. He's going in the middle of the 6th round right now on Yahoo. I think when people sit back and close their eyes and think of what Christian Watson is, he's just this high variance vertical player who, can run really hot and score at a crazy rate like he did during his rookie season. But his game transformed last year, and that's coming off a, significant knee injury. He was the Packers' go-to wide receiver. Like 3rd and 6 critical situations, he was the ISO route winner, and his out route numbers jumped from about 7% previously in his career up to 35% last season. So for a Packers team that gave us so much frustration over the years because of the cycles that they had and in and out, and we didn't know who was going to be on the field at any one time, finally it is straightforward. It is Christian Watson, it is Jaden Reed, and it is Matthew Golden. And I think Christian Watson has a legit chance, as long as he stays on the field, to easily finish as the Packers' number 1 wide receiver and really make good on his fantasy draft slot by about 2 rounds. He's one of my favorite picks in fantasy football this year.
Ooh, I will keep that one in my back pocket for whenever I do my drafting. I want to move on to the quarterback position because we have several quarterbacks in new places. We have quarterbacks in the same places, but with different coaching staffs and different offensive coordinators. So which of those quarterbacks that are in a new situation do you think could have a big year?
My brain immediately jumps to Jaden Daniels. Last year we were taking him as the 2nd or 3rd quarterback off the board. Right now he's quarterback 5, according to Yahoo, in the middle of the 5th round. We are rich with quarterback talent right now. So if you really want to wait and stay patient and draft a quarterback later on, then that's totally fine. That's one strategy. Or you can think of Jaden Daniels, who now in a David Blau offense is going to be asked to do a lot more traditional stuff, work from under center, and they're going to incorporate lots more play action, lots more motion. He had a fantastic rookie year with Cliff Kingsbury, but then everything just got stale and static last year and a bit predictable. And so now entering year 3 here for Jaden Daniels, I don't know how much we're going to see him in preseason action, but he is one of those players that I can't wait to see how comfortable he looks in weeks 3, 4, 5, because this David Blau system, who played under Ben Johnson at the Detroit Lions, is really going to take this offense into like a more consistent traditional style that is really more prevalent across the league right now.
Now, you just had a video come out about 11 players that can win you a fantasy championship, the kind of guys that will come on strong, perform well over expectations, and make every other owner in your league jealous that you thought to pick that guy up. What is a name on the list that you think might be a little bit undervalued, underexpected, under the radar that could end up winning you the fantasy championship?
Oh, I mean, what a great question. Honestly, all my videos kind of run together at this point, so I'm going to do my best to pick out one. Like, to me, the headliner this year, and I understand I'm talking about a second round pick, but it's Brock Bowers. Like, if he hits what Travis Kelsey did in 2020 or 2023, or maybe 2022, in terms of scoring 6 more points than the tight end 2 out there, or most importantly, 8 points, 9 points more than the tight end 5 that we're talking about. And that gives you a leg up, a natural advantage over your competition in any given week. And again, that's talking about the tight end 1 versus the tight end 5, not the tight end 12 on any given week. So Clint Kubiak coming into this offense, we saw what he did last year with a third-year Jackson Smith and Jigba with 51% of his receiving production coming out of heavier looks with just 2 or fewer wide receivers on the field, despite that only being 38% of the routes that he ran. I know that the body types, the positional tag is different from Jackson Smith and Jigba and Brock Bowers, but I really think he can do the same exact thing, funnel everything through Brock Bowers, who we already know set records during his rookie season. So it's tough to click a tight end's name in round 2 when you have that glut of running backs that we love, when you have wide receivers like Nico Collins or Drake London. But I really think that Brock Bowers might be the difference maker when we look back on it, because you could simply draft Amon-Ra St. Brown in round 1 and then have his production copied in round 2 by Brock Bowers this year. And I can't wait to see what he does in this offense.
Go Dogs.
Let's stick in Vegas, because I remember last year going into about fantasy draft time, Ashton Genty was kind of one of the sexy picks. I remember Jason Fitz saying he is my number 1 overall pick, which might have something to do with his Raiders fandom, but still Ashton Genty was viewed as, a high volume impact running back. Clearly he didn't have that kind of production last season. Who would be that kind of buyer beware name that everybody is talking about right now that you don't think will deliver?
Am I able to repeat it? Like, it really might be Ashton Genty all over again. Like, this is someone who's basically going in the exact same slot as he was drafted last year. And I guess my question is why? Like, what has really changed here? He's still going to own, top 2 or top 3 in terms of his team's market share of touches at the running back position. But if you look at it, the Las Vegas Raiders are projected to score the 28th most points in the NFL last year. They're obviously dead last season. I would expect a few more touchdowns. But simply put, like, I'll ask you guys, why draft Ashton Genty when, like, Saquon Barkley is going 1 or 2 slots later? Saquon Barkley a couple of years ago was the player that you needed in fantasy football. There's so much conversation around this Eagles passing attack and how that is going to determine their season, and what can Sean Mannion pluck out of Jalen Hurts? How is Devontae Smith going to, step in for A.J. Brown as wide receiver 1? I'll tell you this, none of it matters unless they get back to the great rushing attack that they had with Saquon Barkley, how he was super explosive, how he also had a great success rate. And that is the key to everything, because when that works, that changes the math and coverage. That makes the passing game even easier. So I am consistently drafting Saquon Barkley ahead of Ashton Genty, even though we're talking about an older-ish running back versus the year 2 guy.
Now, when we get to the NFL draft, there's always a player or two that just gets absurdly overhyped. The media falls in love with him, whether because of his story, because of his school, whatever it might be. I know that you mentioned Ashton Genty and that aspect, but who are some players that you are seeing get a little too much hype? You might be casting a little bit of a side eye at them, thinking, is that guy really worth that high draft pick? Who's someone that falls into that category for you?
You're asking me to be negative Norris this morning, but I understand. I can do it. I'm a little bit worried about David Montgomery and the Houston Texans. When you draft him in the middle of round 5 right now, it makes sense. Like, the equation in your head, it's, they made a move for him so he can lead this backfield in touches. And as we know, volume matters most when it comes to running back points in fantasy football. I guess my opposite end of that statement would be, this is your typical, what we call a dead zone back. Like that is the profile, right? Just assumed workload trumps everything. Dave Montgomery, we've seen his best football already in the NFL. You're not drafting him because of the great play caller that he's attached to. I'll ask you guys, like, what has Nick Caley done in the NFL that makes us say, oh yeah, this guy's one of the best OCs in the league? And then you're not drafting him because of a great offensive line, because they, again, have reshuffled it for like the third straight season. So while Dave Montgomery might step in there and, reach 250 carries and all this stuff, this is just a rushing attack over the last couple of years that has not been great, that you are just drafting him purely based on the number of carries he's going to get. And that doesn't even factor in, some passing down work that Woody Marks is going to have. So I'm mostly, in my strategy, taking 2 running backs early and then spending that round 3, 4, 5 territory drafting a whole bunch of wide receivers, because I would much rather select, Terry McLaurin or Luther Burden in the same round that David Montgomery's going in drafts right now.
You said we're going to ask you to be a negative Norris. Now let's ask you to be a joyful Josh.
Okay,
well done.
Number 1 overall pick. Who would yours be?
Oh, I mean, it's the 2 people you just talked about. Like, you can go Jahmyr Gibbs, you can go Bijan Robinson. Both are simply fantastic. I love that Bijan got his contract, because as we have seen over the last couple of years, if you do miss training camp, that does linger into the season. So I'm really hoping we'll get Jahmyr Gibbs back onto the practice field. The one determining factor between the 2, and why I am taking Jahmyr Gibbs over Bijan Robinson, simply put, the markets say that the Lions offense is much better than the Atlanta Falcons offense. Like, the Lions are projected for the 3rd most points in the league this season, and compare that to the Atlanta Falcons 25th. So I'm not saying you shouldn't take Bijan, because as we know, he catches all the passes. He scores all the touchdowns basically for the team, unless your name is Drake London and or Kyle Pitts. But just simply put, when you are projected to score, 5 more points on a weekly basis, that adds up throughout the entire season. And more points for your team usually means more points in our fantasy football back pocket. So I'm going to take Jahmyr Gibbs number 1 overall this year.
Now, I was going to ask you about tight ends and Brock Bowers, but you already buttoned that up. So let's flip over to the other side of the ball. When you're looking at defenses, what do you look for in a defense, and who would be your number 1 defense off the board this year?
Yeah, you're really asking me to go deep here. With defenses, it's one of those things where I'm going to wait until the very last round to select my defense. Just overall in the NFL, unless you have the Seahawks, the Texans, or the Broncos, you're going to change your defense on basically any given week, other than, for matchup purposes, because really what it comes down to is sacks and turnovers. That's what gives you the most fantasy points with defenses. And that's not necessarily sticky week to week with the great defenses out there. It's more sticky against the worst opponents. And so I want to attack the teams that are facing the, Cleveland Browns. I want to attack the teams that are facing the Arizona Cardinals, or whoever else the backup quarterbacks out there that are stepping in during that week. And so for me, the defense game is very, very much a week-to-week dilemma versus who I'm going to draft them at the end of the first round, or the end of my fantasy drafts.
So, Josh, I am a proof of concept person. I want to see it before I can really buy into it. But if there was one rookie that you think that I should trust in my upcoming fantasy draft, who would that guy be?
I will say, like, this rookie class, it's just overall disappointing. So it can be a bit tough to really buy into any of them. One I'm going to throw at you, and I can't wait to see what he does in preseason, is Jadarian Price and the Seattle Seahawks. And, I just had a conversation with Hayden and Nate Tice on our show yesterday, and I don't know how I feel about Jadarian Price right now. Like, I told everyone to draft Ken Walker III last summer. It didn't work out until it really did, and then I can say that, hey, he would have been a fantastic pick if he had gotten, the majority of the run. Now, heading into this year, it seems like a franchise state of mind that they're going to have a split backfield no matter what, even if Zach Charbonnet is not healthy until week 5, week 6. And so that means like Jadarian Price is splitting time with George Holani, which I guess we should factor in here. We should factor in here. But if you're also telling me on the opposite side of that coin, if I'm able to draft a first round rookie running back, albeit like the 32nd overall pick in round 6, and the only person I have to worry about taking opportunities away from him is a pure passing down player in George Holani, then Jadarian Price is one of those guys that in the preseason, if he reels off one big run or one big catch, I could see his ADP climb 1 or 2 rounds a la Amir Abdullah during his rookie season. So Jadarian Price is one of those players that I'm going to have a heavy focus on over the next 3 weeks in terms of his preseason work, see how he looks, see how he stacks up against NFL competition, because as you both know, he barely played at Notre Dame. I mean, barely played 19 targets over the last 3 years. So he has a lot to prove, but if he does that in this 3 or 4 week sample, he could be a significant value in round 6.
All right, I loved your strategy there about picking the defense last. So let's talk a little bit of draft strategy here. We all know the basics. You pick the running back or the marquee wide receiver early, and then you pair him with Brock Bowers if you can get him in the second round. But are there any unconventional draft strategies that you like? I mean, obviously it depends on where you're picking in the draft, but is there anything, any zag where everyone else is zigging, where you like to employ something that catches your fellow owners off guard during the draft?
Yeah, I think this is a good question. So later on, when we get to, I don't know, round 10 or round 11 or round 9, I think you could easily make the case that the tight ends in that area just totally outscore the wide receivers. Namely, like Chigo Kwankwo, for example, is going in the 11th round. Some wide receivers in that range are Xavier Worthy, Wan'Dale Robinson. I could list a few more. Chigo Kwankwo, unless the Commanders go out and sign Stephon Diggs, has a real pathway to being his team's second target earner, second best receiver in this passing game. And like, again, talking about the Commanders, he could be David Blau's like Sam Laporta, who you can hide in the running game a little bit, but he really comes alive in the passing game in terms of motioning him, getting him in stacks, lining him up a wide receiver, all this type of stuff. And just a couple of years ago, Sam Laporta was the top scoring tight end, albeit in a down tight end season. So tight ends are on my radar quite a bit. Like I started the offseason saying, okay, you got to draft Brock Bowers, Colson Loveland, or Tyler Warren, and then wait and wait and wait. But the more I dig in and the more homework I do this summer, like I can make a great case for Kyle Pitts. I can make a great case for Sam Laporta. Both those guys are in round 6. But if I am waiting, then Chigo Kwankwo is someone that has my eye in round 11.
You can find him on Yahoo Fantasy Football with Josh and Hayden. He and Hayden Wings do such a fabulous job of breaking down all things fantasy. Josh, thank you so much for stopping by the show, and we will catch up with you soon. And I blame you if I lose my fantasy league.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Talk to you guys soon. See ya.
Sure, it's not the first time you've heard that. Appreciate Josh for stopping by the show here. But coming up next, that man made his debut in Dodger Blue. But it wasn't all things easy there in LA. We'll break down coming up next.
What's the biggest difference between college fantasy football and NFL fantasy football?
Biggest difference is going to be the player pool. And we're doing Power 4 only here at Yahoo. That's 68 teams. You have 32 in the NFL. You know the entire rosters of these teams. When it comes to college, there's so much turnover and transfer portal moves, plus graduations, that every roster is in flux from year to year, and you're constantly reestablishing that continuity.
3rd and goal from just inside the 7. Sharks, first possession of the second half. Edwards to throw, rips it, end zone. Off the tip, it's caught, touchdown, far wall, Jaden Stoshak.
That is incredible concentration by Stoshak. It's good defense. It felt like Orlando knew it was coming, not quite able to haul it down, and instead it turns into a touchdown. Great catch.
Ariel, it's like the first time in Rio de Janeiro in 2003 or so when I came out and I did the It's Time, and I'm always focused on the fighter. I don't listen to the audience. And Stitch Duran told me when I got out of the octagon, he goes, Buff, did you hear that? I go, what? He said, the entire stadium said it's time with you. And I go, oh my God. And then Ariel, when they played it at FIFA, I couldn't believe it. It's like 80,000, 70,000 people erupting with It's Time.
On second down, shuffling out. DeLaurent far wall, what a catch! Reaching over to make the grab at the 5-yard line is Naquan Murray.
Murray is having himself a night. And this is just great concentration. Dropping back, you see here, he takes a long time. He's throwing off his back foot. Flutters on him a little bit. Great concentration by Murray to make that catch happen.
Tarik Skubal had a solid debut with the Dodgers, but left with the team trailing after pitching 6 innings. And Tarik Skubal's Dodger debut, the Dodgers did fall to the Chicago Cubs 5-1. So with that, Busbee, that's 5 straight losses for the Dodgers, including just getting swept by the Boston Red Sox. And all vibes are good at Boston following the trade deadline. Are we hoping a little bit too quick to hand them the World Series title after the deadline?
Yeah, another Boston-LA series ends in a sweep. But yeah, no, I don't think we're being too quick to hand them. They're going to win it. Here's the thing. I grew up a Braves fan. I lived through the 1990s Braves when they had the most amazing pitching staff assembled in human history. And then they'd run into these short series and they would be absolutely knocked out. So baseball's a game of momentum going back and forth. So the Dodgers may not necessarily win, but they are so deep. They're much more deep than even that Braves team, where if one player's having trouble, if 2 players are having trouble, if 4 players are having trouble, they still have another 5 that are right there able to pick up the slack. They're so deep at every position, so strong at every position, that I think that they're still obviously the prohibitive favorites. They can have a down week, a down series now and then, and rebound effectively enough from it once we get to October.
I think that both things can be true. That I wasn't handing the Dodgers the World Series title, so I can't be too quick to do it. Because I said this yesterday, and we broke down the Tarik Skubal trade, that look, baseball's a funky and funny and weird sport. There have been a lot of years where the best team in the regular season in baseball doesn't end up winning the World Series, doesn't even end up getting to the World Series, because any team can get really hot at any moment. Any pitcher can have the game of his life or the worst game of his life on any given night, and that could be the difference in any series throughout the postseason. Baseball's just too finicky and too funky for me to say definitively on August 5th that the Dodgers are going to win the World Series. So I never thought that that was the case. But also at the same time, just because the Dodgers are on a 5-game losing streak and got swept by the Red Sox and dropped that game last night to the Chicago Cubs doesn't mean that all of a sudden this season is a disaster and the Dodgers stink and they're not going to win the World Series and everybody overreact. No. This is a 162-game season. You're going to have your ebbs and your flows. You're going to have your peaks and your valleys. You're going to go through your winning streaks and your losing streaks. I just think the Dodgers have been so much in the baseball headlines and have been commanding so much of our Major League Baseball conversation that we now have them under a microscope. And beware of looking under a microscope when it comes to baseball, because you have to zoom out a little bit. You have to zoom out and look at the entirety of a season or look at streaks. It's only August 5th. Sure, yes, we're in the second half of the Major League Baseball season. And sure, you want to start playing your best baseball here soon because you want to start getting hot once you get into the postseason. But just because the Dodgers are on a losing streak does not make a roster with Tarik Skubal and Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, and the list goes on and on and on because the roster is absurd. Just, it doesn't say to me that all Dodgers fans should just feel doomed because the season is over. I think that that is ridiculous. The Dodgers are in no danger of missing the postseason, but the same cannot be said, though, for another Major League Baseball spender. It's the New York Yankees. The AL wild card race is tight. The AL East has been truly a joy to watch. Yankees GM Brian Cashman is also not sure that Aaron Judge will return at all this season. He said, quote, "We are currently still very optimistic that he's going to return, but there's challenges with all of that too." And a very long word salad scrum that he had with the media earlier this week. In your opinion, Busbee, are the Yankees in danger of missing out on the postseason altogether?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the kind of thing where, you talked about Dodgers fans, you talk about Yankees fans, you talk about Red Sox fans. Everybody else, all the other the fans and all the other teams of baseball are not going to cry tears for any of these teams if they happen to miss out on the postseason, but it is very much a possibility. I think that what saves the Yankees is their schedule. You look down at the end of September when the season is wrapping up. They don't face the Red Sox at all in the month of September. They wrap up in August against them. They face the Rays, obviously the division-leading Rays, but not in their final series. The Rays, on the other hand, have the Red Sox. They have the Yankees, and then they have the resurgent Phillies there to wrap up their season. So the schedule breaks a little bit in the Yankees' way, but as you mentioned, there's so much that can happen in the course even of 3 weeks of the final weeks of the season. So yeah, the Yankees have a lot to be concerned about, and without Aaron Judge, it gets that much steeper of a hill for them to try and climb to get in the postseason, to say nothing of making any noise there.
I'm with you. And if we're going to talk about weird quotes that came out of the Yankees front office, we heard Aaron Boone say that Giancarlo Stanton has been outside and moving around. Whatever that means.
What does that mean? I was outside and moving around this
dog.
morning. I mean, yeah, exactly. What does that mean?
Outside moving around. Like, isn't that the bare minimum? Strange thing to say there. But look, so that's a hazy timeline for Giancarlo Stanton. That's a hazy timeline for return for Aaron Judge, if he returns at all. I do not think the Yankees can do anything substantial without those two. Certainly not without Aaron Judge, especially after what the Red Sox did at the trade deadline. They got significantly better. They addressed any areas of need and any areas that they could have upgraded. You look at the Tampa Bay Rays. We don't talk enough about the Tampa Bay Rays, but they now have a pretty comfortable lead in that division. The Yankees didn't really do anything at the trade deadline that would give me a lot of hope or a lot of optimism that they can currently right this ship. So the Red Sox are red hot. The Rays are red hot, and it feels like the Yankees just have a lot of question marks, not just with who they have on the field, but who hasn't yet been able to return to it. So if Aaron Judge can't come back, I don't have a lot of faith that the Yankees can right this ship, and I would not put my money on the Yankees even finding the postseason at all, which is crazy to think about with the amount of talent on this roster. All right, coming up next, we'll continue the baseball conversation. Maybe it's fantasy baseball? Did he even exist?
How do you feel about the Seahawks skill players at this point in time?
The good part, I think, if you're a Seahawks fan, what you would argue here is that outside of Cooper Kupp, like, everybody should, I think, have another step to take. It's not impossible that JSN does this again, but you bake in some, I'm not like negative against the player, but just a little regression there. The way you offset that is younger guys and other players step up.
Derby on the ground, a high popper. Puka comes up to get it at the 10. Williams out over the 15 and the 20. Puka Williams is free. Inside the 10, 5, touchdown! Puka Williams.
When you have one of the best returners in the league, when you have one of the fastest guys in the league, he has been on the verge of returning these over and over in this game. You know how dangerous he is. You've got to have a plan.
We're going to talk about Alan Graves, who looks like a hit of a draft prospect for the Toronto Raptors. Looks sensational, man.
I thought the shot was there. You talked about the percentage, but also most of the shots were off of the catch, above the break. Just a good sign in terms of his positioning.
And I think for the Toronto Raptors, a team that already has so much size, adding Alan Graves to this, it almost feels like some of those championship Raptors teams.
Walter Wilbon's on his left hip. White rolls right. White throws deep. White's got a man open. Jamon Street. Touchdown, New Mexico. First career touchdown pass for LaJames White. And New Mexico strikes on first down.
Look at him go. Calls for it. Fakes the handoff. I mean, textbook QB1 stuff.
Pretty good throw.
Really good.
If you told me a majority of MLB owners were colluding so that they could use the Dodgers as the reason for a salary cap, I would probably believe you at this point. Dun, dun, dun. There's a conspiracy in Major League Baseball. So, Busby, I will ask you, do you believe that? Do you believe that the owners in MLB conspired to trade Skubal to the Dodgers so they could get everybody all hot and bothered so we could implement an MLB salary cap?
I'm going to say that this was a soft conspiracy in the situation, in the sense that they weren't sitting around a smoky room all plotting and they had a picture of Tarik Skubal there in the center of the table and they were plotting on how to achieve world domination that way. But it's also a situation where it benefits them a great deal to have public opinion be like, the Dodgers, you got to be frigging kidding me. That was my reaction when I got the notification from Yahoo Sports and probably you as well on Saturday that Skubal was going to be a Dodger. And so the more that kind of perception is out there, the more there is this kind of fan backlash against the players and these massive salaries, and the more that benefits the owners. So I think this is a situation where they didn't necessarily create that. You would have a hard time getting, say, the Brewers and the Braves to buy in on, yes, absolutely, give the best pitcher in baseball to the best team in baseball. We'll go with that. You'd have a hard time getting them to buy in on that. But in terms of longer term, this kind of benefits everybody in ownership. Yeah, I absolutely believe that they're like, well, this kind of sucks for this season, but let's look at the bigger picture.
So when I first heard this conspiracy, I thought, this is ridiculous. Owners own teams to win games, and they're not going to actively make a decision to make one behemoth even bigger and just for the sake of getting what they want. And then I looked at the Guardians, the Marlins, the White Sox, the Athletics, certainly. But even throw the Rays into the conversation. I do believe that those owners prioritize not spending money over winning baseball games. I do believe that there is enough of a fraction of MLB owners that are like, yeah, we're really just in this for our bottom line, and we really don't care that much about winning, and we really don't care that much about serving our fans a quality product on the field. I know that sounds crazy. Look at the A's. Tell me I'm wrong. So I kind of believe this. I do believe that the owners want a salary cap so badly that they are willing to do whatever it takes to throw this season away and say, you know what, Dodgers, you want them, you take them, because it helps our bottom line and it helps Major League Baseball for the long term much more than it would help our team in the short term. So even though it feels icky and it sounds gross and nobody would ever admit to it, I think we very much so could be onto something here. But let's stick in baseball for our next conspiracy theory. Cubs slugger Pete Armstrong was on Kristen Cavallari's podcast, which, let me just say, what? Kristen Cavallari? What? Well, that was a duo between Pete Armstrong and Kristen Cavallari, who, by the way, is a reality TV star and got famous from Laguna Beach. Never would have put those two together, but alas. He revealed to the world that he believes that Babe Ruth never existed. He is a Babe Ruth truther. Do you believe that Babe Ruth never, a Babe Ruther, if you will, do you believe he never existed?
I love this segment because I'm getting visions of you like Charlie Day with a whole poster in your basement with yarn between the connections between Kristen Cavallari, Pete Crow Armstrong, Babe Ruth, the Dodgers, the whole bit. You're setting it all up perfectly. In terms of this one, this is a strange one because, there are actually people walking the earth right now who met Babe Ruth. They may not have seen him play. He retired in the 1930s. You have to be fairly old to have seen him actually play. But there are plenty of people who met him, our grandparents and great-grandparents. It's more a situation where we don't believe anything that we didn't see with our own eyes because AI is so we can fake so many things with AI. This reminded me of the situation where there's a few months back, about a few years back, where a Mets player was asked about Seinfeld. And of course, everyone of a certain age knows everything about Seinfeld. And to this guy, it was ancient history. And so it's a case where history keeps receding further and further in the past. Babe Ruth did exist. Did he point into the grandstands and hit that home run? That's debatable. But Babe Ruth absolutely existed. And I really hope Pete Crow Armstrong was just having a little fun here and not actually questioning whether a real, legitimate 20th century historical figure actually existed.
Why are we so skeptical to believe things that we didn't live through? I've heard the conspiracy too that the Titanic was never real. I was like, what are we talking about? We have literally found
Leonardo DiCaprio
remains
was
of
on
the
it.
Titanic and we watched it. It won an Oscar. What are you guys talking about? So when I've actually never even heard this conspiracy that Babe Ruth never existed, and I think that this is crazy. I mean, Babe Ruth's baseball career ended less than 100 years ago. Like, we're not that many generations removed from Babe Ruth. It may feel like a long time ago because it was in black and white and so much has changed since then, but it really was not that long ago. We may even have living relatives that actually lived and saw and remembered Babe Ruth playing baseball. So I don't buy into this. I do think that your theory is a good one, though, that maybe over time, I love that, maybe over time, the legend and the lore of Babe Ruth has gotten exaggerated and maybe we've lost the truth there a little bit, kind of like a long, hundreds-year-long game of telephone. But there's a picture of him. He existed. I don't want to believe there's a world where Babe Ruth didn't exist. Okay, final one. This has been one of my favorite conspiracies in the NFL over the last several years. The 49ers are, stop me if you've heard this before, dealing with the injuries at camp. They're dealing with a lot of injuries, which has resurfaced all of the memes and all of the conspiracies about the electrical substation located just off of the practice facilities. Do you believe the 49ers injury woes are connected to the electrical substation near their camp?
Here is my frustration with this electrical substation story, and I'm going to tie it into the Spider-Man movie. Okay, in the MCU, every time that you have an incident like this, where you have a power surge, where you have something unexpected, where technology goes crazy, it gives superpowers. We should have Brock Purdy being able to burst into flame. We should have Christian McCaffrey being 10 feet tall, and yet all we've got is blown ACL, man. It's just, it's really unfair to the 49ers that all of these, that they're getting exposed to this electrical substation and they're not getting any superpowers out of it. All they're getting is injured. So yes, I'm going to believe it. And I believe that it's cosmically unfair that the 49ers are not getting any superpowers out of this exposure to this substation.
It's a great point. Where's the radioactive spiders? Like, when does the electrical substation give everybody, the ability to see in super slow-mo, give anybody super strength? It's just making everybody's ACLs all weak. I do believe it's happened before when there is something that is unnatural very close to you, that it can impact and affect the human body. I've seen Aaron Brockovich. I know what that can do. So I have a hard time, though, because yes, the 49ers have had injuries at, it feels like a higher rate than maybe any other team in the NFL. But also, how much of that is, hey, you got a bunch of old dudes playing a very physical sport and have a lot of miles on their body. Like, how much of Mike Evans being out of practice or dealing with injuries at training camp are due to being next to an electrical substation? And how much of it is he's north of 30 and has been playing in the league for like a decade? So I don't think it's nothing, but I also don't think it's everything. I don't think that the electrical substation is totally and completely to blame. But I do love the memes. And I'm here for the memes. Keep them coming. No doubt. All right, coming up next, we are officially in the second half of the WNBA season. Our biggest questions for the second half of the season. We'll have those answered by our very own Cassandra Negley.
And I had that moment there at the World Cup a few minutes before we went out and realized, oh my God, 30 plus years, all the amazing events that I've been able to be part of, including my beloved UFC, now culminates into this moment where it's the biggest sporting event and the biggest sports stage in the world. And I'm part of this? Wow.
Sharks down 10. Third down and 10 from the 19. Edwards steps up. Now he's in trouble. And Edwards sacked. Back at the 17. And once again, it's Devontae O'Malley. And flipped into the end zone. Touchdown. A thing of beauty. DeLaurent from Murray with a late pitch over the top, end over end, and a Pirates touchdown.
Darian Mensah was not the only player who left Duke that day to go to Miami. His best receiver, Cooper Barkate, went with him. He was the best receiver in the Ivy League at Harvard in 2024. He graduates from Harvard. He hops in the portal, goes to Duke, and has 1,100 receiving yards at Duke last year. Well, now he goes to Miami.
Harvard to Miami. How can you not love this sport right now? This is fantastic.
Still Barnes in there. No Jared Ware on this drive yet. Roberts against the blitz. Goes to the end zone for Keon Williams. Easy as you like. 16-yard touchdown.
There's Keon Williams. Tried to go to him in the last drive on that fourth down play to the end zone. Good defense by Orlando, but that time able to shake free to the corner.
Welcome to the Cleveland Sirens. We officially have a name and branding and colors for the newest WNBA team that will be joining the league in 2028. So joining us now is Yahoo Sports senior editor for women's basketball, Cass Negley, and also my co-host on Hoops 360. Cass, it's great to catch up with you. Your thoughts, the Cleveland Sirens, no more Cleveland Rockers, but what did you make of what will be the newest WNBA franchise?
Yeah, I kind of like it. I think the big thing I like about it, and Allison Howard, the president of basketball operations, said this, was we cannot be the Lady Cavaliers. Like, this has to be something different. It is completely different. It's different colors. It's different branding. I kind of like that it ties into Lake Erie. I grew up around lakes. They are such a big part of what your community is and who you are. That's really cool. I do think the one thing I don't love about it is in September 2024, the PWHL renamed all of their teams in the second season. One of them is the New York Sirens. Now, the origins are different, but I don't love that these are coming into women's leagues so quickly behind each other. That said, different branding. This is for the lake. That is for hockey and the city and sounds of the city. So it's a little different.
Now, if we are working off of the Odyssey, I look forward to another team being named the Cyclops, although I'm not sure that's the best representation of a
sounds like an
basketball team.
NHL team, though.
It does. It does. But I am, yeah, there's all kinds of different possibilities there. I am contractually required to ask you a Caitlin Clark question. It is. It's literally in our contract. But let's talk honestly on-court performance here. She's the two-time Eastern Conference Player of the Week. What has she discovered that has allowed her to level up her game over the last couple of weeks?
I think there's a few things. I do not think we can over discuss the fact that she's actually healthy, like fully healthy. It seems like she feels fully healthy. She's gotten over kind of the mental hurdle of coming back from these soft tissue injuries. And it was only 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'm not looking at the calendar, but she was on minutes restrictions coming back from that back injury. When you're a player like Caitlin Clark, you want to get into the rhythm of the game. That's what she does. I've always said since Iowa, if she hits an early deep three-pointer, it's going to be a long night because she's feeling it and she's feeling good. I also think if you look at the team collectively, they're playing strong around her. They have the league's best offense. That's never been a problem. You have teams, players finishing plays alongside her. And I don't think we can talk enough about the fact that her missing last year meant that the chemistry is a little behind. And third, her mid-range game is not talked about enough. We always talk about the logo threes, if she's being efficient there or not. She's getting to the mid-range a lot and doing well at it. It seems like things are finally clicking and she's gotten over the issues that she's had with injuries recently.
Let's not let the narratives that have been created about Caitlin Clark overshadow the actual on-the-court production from Caitlin Clark. But now that Caitlin Clark is healthy, if she can stay healthy, we'll keep all of our fingers crossed for the rest of the season and into the postseason. What does that mean for the Fever ceiling?
It's finals. It's a championship. That's their ceiling with this team. Now, obviously, the drawback is the defense, and we saw that a little bit against the Lynx on Sunday in what was an incredibly good game. But the Lynx have led the league this year. We're going to talk about them a little later, but Indiana was right in there with them. There were a few miscues. Aaliyah Boston takes and makes that three-pointer. Maybe we're looking at a different result, but they can win a championship this year. They tighten up a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, or at least have some solid defensive stops and kills at the right time.
This is the time of the season where everybody is getting in position to make their playoff run. And if you're going to make that playoff run, you've really got to start stacking up wins. Who is a team that's kind of on the fringe, on the outside looking in right now, that you think could make a run for that playoff slot and maybe surprise some people?
Well, everyone's talking about the Mercury. Obviously, they just add Kelsey Plum. And I think, the whole Kelsey Plum of it, the fit has never been a question. It's literally, can they make up enough ground? That's the obvious one. I'm going to throw out a different one. No one roll your eyes. What about Chicago? They have a net rating of -2. That's in 8th place. They've been tight with some teams. I'm just saying, if we're going to maybe go bold, maybe the Sky can make a little noise. Courtney Vandersloot looks like her old self coming off an ACL. If Sydney Taylor is not injured, maybe they can slide up. That said, I think the top 8 is the top 8, and they're going to move within each other, but that's probably it.
With that being said, about the Mercury, everybody, like you said, it's the team that everyone is pointing to as, if anyone, it could be them making that push for the postseason. You don't trade for Kelsey Plum on an expiring contract if you don't think that you can make that push for the postseason. Do you think they can? And we'll also discuss on Hoops 360. So this is just a little bit of an appetizer. You can find that on the Yahoo Sports YouTube page and your preferred podcast platform. Thank you very much. Do you think Kelsey Plum can be the difference for the Phoenix Mercury?
Yes, absolutely. And we saw that in the first game. Anytime you add Kelsey Plum, you're automatically a better team. I think also underrated about Kelsey Plum, the Nick Uren talked about, the general manager, is her leadership. She has incredible leadership. She has an incredible story in this league. She's won 2 championships already on the team that everyone is chasing, the Aces. She brings a lot in that way. I just don't know that the math's the correct way for Phoenix to make the playoffs. Like, they are going to need a lot of help. I think right now they have 5.5 games to make up with like 12 games left. There's just not a lot of room for error. And I think that's why a lot of us are saying, can they? Yes. Will they? Probably not.
Now, anytime a head coach joins a team, there's going to be a spotlight on that coach. And when that team is in New York, the spotlight is about 10 times brighter. We're looking at the New York Liberty. We're looking at Chris DeMarco, first year as head coach there. The Liberty stood pat at the deadline. There are questions about how DeMarco is using Sabrina Ionescu. What is your take? Give us your kind of overall take on his tenure to date and the state of the Liberty at this moment.
It's been rocky, absolutely rocky. You mentioned that they stayed pat at the deadline. You have Benijah Laney Hamilton, who is, yes, coming off injury, but was a massive part of that first year of the super team and then the championship team. And so to see her have all these did not plays is honestly very confusing. There's not a lot of clarity there. Chris DeMarco has played with a lot of lineups out of necessity. He's had 13 different starting lineups due to injuries, but also seems to be playing with them in the game. At this point, you can't do that anymore. Now, that said, the Liberty are on a little bit of a winning streak. They do look better coming out of the break. You mentioned Sabrina Ionescu. I did not think she took enough shot attempts against the Aces, and she always plays well against the Aces, so that was disappointing. But for a first year in New York, it's been a rocky road, and certainly we can't ignore the fact that there have been a lot of injuries that Chris has had to deal with. That includes Leonie Fibic. Sabrina was gone for a little bit. It's just been another iffy year for New York.
Satu Sabli has been dealing with concussions. It's something that plagued them last year as well. They've just been bitten by the injury bug. Is it just injury, or is there something else there in New York that you have diagnosed as the reason why they are in that 8th spot now in the standings?
Well, I think if you can wave a wand to get Leonie Fibic back, that solves a lot of your problems. Obviously, we're not only talking about injuries. I think anytime you have a first-time head coach, like he's never been a head coach before, he's not used to the WNBA, there's going to be some trials and tribulations. I think what's interesting about New York, too, is these three, Sabrina, JJ, and Stewie, have been playing together for 4 years now. And I don't think any of us have felt like they've truly lived up to their potential playing alongside each other. And now acknowledging that they made the finals and then won a championship, but it just never feels like they've hit their ceiling, and they still haven't hit their ceiling. We'll see if they can in the second half and make some noise in the playoffs, because all you have to do is get in.
Now, we've talked earlier about spectacular team names. Here's another one. Golden State Valkyries. Love that name. Love it name. And not only that, they're playing well. They're keeping pace with the Lynx, the Aces. How are they so good? So in addition to having just an absolutely kick-ass name, how are they playing so well this early in their tenure?
I think it's the name. Just the name has helped them completely. No, I mean, first and foremost, you bring in a good head coach. Natalie Nakase was on those Aces teams, won championships, kind of, I think, waited for a good opportunity and had one. And Becky Hammon told her, like, this is a good opportunity. I think you have a team of 6 players who played a certain role on other teams. And we've heard this in Portland with the Fire, how when you bring those players together, there's an immediate chemistry. There's a hunger there. They want this really badly. You add Gabby Williams, who fits into the system perfectly. You don't have to change things around. She's going to help your defense. The defense is really good and keeps you in games. But I also think it's what the Valkyries have done outside of it. They have supported their players in ways that we have historically not seen in the W. And we see that in Las Vegas, New York, Indiana is on the come up. You know, they are supporting their players in ways that, for example, the NBA has done for a long time. But the Valkyries are coming in doing that immediately. And I do think that goes a long way to help players just focus on the basketball, key into what they're doing, and play Natalie Nakase's way and make a lot of noise. They also were very clear from the beginning. They want a championship in 5 years. So we're in year 2.
I thought I won a championship in 5 years was an awfully lofty expectation.
I remember.
You look at the Valkyries making the postseason, first time ever, an inaugural, or a team, and its inaugural season made the postseason. You look at the Valkyries now, a top 3 team in the league, might not be as lofty as maybe we all initially thought. You bring up Natalie Nakase, Coach of the Year last year, want to transition to another great head coach, and that is Cheryl Reeve in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
The Lynx have a comfortable lead in the entire WNBA, but they also have the toughest remaining schedule in the league. How can they, in your opinion, Cass, hold on to that top spot even with the absolute gauntlet that they have upcoming?
They have kind of a cheat code a little bit because Nafisa Collier is back. It's the most interesting thing that they succeeded the way that they did in the first half without Fee. And you and I have talked about this extensively. The most surprising team given that. Now, you have feedback, you have some things to tweak. It's clear that you are still the best team, and we never count out Cheryl Reeve. But these are going to be very important games. They have 2 against Las Vegas, 2 against the Valkyries, 2 against the Fever. And we just saw on Sunday, the margin is very small. Kelsey Plum talked about this. The margins this year are very small. So they have to be able to win games late with this cheat code of adding Fee back in, having the bench depth. I think they can, but I don't know that the gap is going to be as large and widen as much as people think it will, because they do have some of the toughest teams left on the schedule.
Last one for you, Cass, just for anyone hopping onto the WNBA train now. Which team is the most fun to watch right now, in your opinion?
You guys are going to get me in trouble.
We're always in trouble.
We're always in trouble for the same things because, listen, Indiana is fun on a nightly basis. Like the way that they play, their offense, watching Caitlin Clark play at the level that she's playing, they're fun. The Minnesota Lynx, they're fun. Olivia Miles, you're going to see yet another incredible rookie. Like, these past 3 classes have been so good. And we're going to talk more about this on Hoops 360, but the classes coming in are so good. So watch the Fever, the Lynx, the Aces have a 4-time MVP in Asia Wilson. Just seeing the way she can operate in and outside of the paint. Beautiful. You know, the Liberty have some of the best players in the world. They're going to go play for Team USA and in the World Cup. I think any game you turn on has the ability to be a very close game, but you know, as we can see here, like, viewership is always booming for the Fever, and there's a reason for it.
The level of play in the W this year matches the level of financial investment, the level of growth, the level of popularity. It's been an absolute blast. So far this season, we've got a full second half to go. Cassandra Negley joining us here in the program. We will have a new episode of Hoops 360 dropping today. So if you want to just a little appetizer here, you'll get the full meal later on this afternoon. But Cass, thanks so much for stopping by, my friend. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, friends.
See you, Cass.
All right, coming up next here on Yahoo Sports Daily, we have our first edition of the preseason coaches poll. We'll break down what they got right and what they didn't.
What's the biggest difference between college fantasy football and NFL fantasy football?
Biggest difference is going to be the player pool. And we're doing Power 4 only here at Yahoo. That's 68 teams. You have 32 in the NFL. You know the entire rosters of these teams. When it comes to college, there's so much turnover and transfer portal moves, plus graduations, that every roster is in flux from year to year, and you're constantly reestablishing that continuity.
3rd and goal from just inside the 7. Sharks, first possession of the second half. Edwards to throw, rips it, end zone. Off the tip, it's caught, touchdown, far wall, Jaden Stoshak.
That is incredible concentration by Stoshak. It's good defense. It felt like Orlando knew it was coming, not quite able to haul it down, and instead it turns into a touchdown. Great catch.
Ariel, it's like the first time in Rio de Janeiro in 2003 or so when I came out and I did the It's Time, and I'm always focused on the fighter. I don't listen to the audience. And Stitch Duran told me when I got out of the octagon, he goes, Buff, did you hear that? I go, what? He said, the entire stadium said it's time with you. And I go, oh my God. And then Ariel, when they played it at FIFA, I couldn't believe it. It's like 80,000, 70,000 people erupting with It's Time.
On 2nd down, shuffling out. DeLaurent far wall, what a catch! Reaching over to make the grab at the 5-yard line is Naquan Murray.
Murray is having himself a night. And this is just great concentration. Dropping back, you see here, he takes a long time. He's throwing off his back foot. Flutters on him a little bit. Great concentration by Murray to make that catch happen.
We know football season is close because we just got the first edition of the college football coaches poll. Ohio State takes the top spot, followed by Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Notre Dame rounding out the top 5. So Busbee, what were the biggest surprises in the first edition of the coaches poll, in your opinion?
I mean, there's a few here, but the big one that kind of starts to stand out is the SEC is slipping. You know, it was not all that long ago that we'd put Alabama up there, and then everybody, you start with 2 going down from there. Alabama's all the way down at number 11. Look at what we've got now. You've got Georgia at 3, Texas at 4. Texas at 4, still unproven to me. And then it kind of goes on downward from there until you start getting to more SEC teams. So it has been an ongoing narrative these last few years about how the Big Ten is getting past the SEC, at least on the field, if not necessarily in the headlines. This coaches poll seems to continue that and accelerate that trend.
Yeah, and you see kind of a little cluster of SEC teams with A&M at 8, Oklahoma at 9, Ole Miss at 10, Alabama 11, LSU at 13. So I think that's kind of identifying how how many questions I guess there are that exist in the SEC, and that there's maybe no one certified top dog, so to speak, in this conference, and that maybe Georgia and Texas are above the rest, and then there's that next tier, if you want to call it 1B, or the second tier of teams that any of them could be considered playoff contenders, because that's exactly how I view those teams that I just listed in A&M, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Alabama, so on and so forth. So it's a great call out by you. One team that was shocking that I thought was represented in the top 25, and I think is being carried by the brand and is being carried by what they were and not by what they are, is Clemson. Look, Clemson
Yes.
won 7 games last year. Clemson was not a competitive football team last year, and Clemson loses their starting quarterback in Cade Klubnik. Chris Vizina steps in. He is totally and completely unproven. And sure, Dabo went into the transfer portal and got more transfers this past season than he ever has. But that still doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence about this team, because they've still lost more than they added this past offseason. And I had an opportunity to talk to Dabo Swinney at ACC Media Days, and what he kept harping on was the graduation rate and the job placement rate and how they're developing leaders of men, and all of those things are lovely and wonderful and great, but that doesn't come in the form of wins and losses. So coming off of a rough season, what they didn't address in the transfer portal this offseason, and just with the number of question marks and the inexperience that Clemson has on this roster, I feel like they're being more carried by what they have been and not what they are right now. Because what they are right now is maybe the 4th best team in the ACC.
Yeah, Tyler from Spartanburg does not care about graduation rates, does not care about job placement. Tyler from Spartanburg wants to know, are my Tigers going to win a couple more games? Are they going to beat South Carolina? Are they going to get to the ACC championship and back where they ought to be? So yeah, that's a mistaken focus. All due respect to Dabo, but focus on the field.
Love Dabo, but the
Absolutely.
fans care about graduation rates when you win championships. They don't care about that so much when you go 7-6 on the season.
Yes.
But if you could wave a magic wand and make one change, what change would you make?
Here's what I would do. I would take the entire top 25 list. I would keep it in existence, but I would make it alphabetical so that there is no difference, no distinction between Ohio State and Missouri down at number 25. Just everybody gets to that big point. Okay, look, you want to feel good? Yes, you're a top 25 preseason team. That's wonderful, but we don't know where you fit because we haven't played any damn games yet. So yeah, make it alphabetical. Give them the little honor. They could put the plaque up in the athletic facility, whatever they want to do with it. But let's not pretend that because there's so many difficulties, and we'll discuss this more about how preseason polls cause so many difficulties down the line for the first few weeks of the season. Just start everybody from the starting line and just give them their notification that they're in the top 25, and then go from there.
Yeah, see, if I were to wave a magic wand, then I'm with you 100%. It would be this perception that Indiana deserves to be the number 1 team in the country just because they won the national championship last year. And Miami deserves to be the number 2 team in the country because they were the national runners-up last year. It just doesn't work that way, because Indiana is losing a massive percentage of their offensive production, including the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback, including a majority of their leading receivers last year, including their 2 leading rushers from last year. That's a really empty cupboard. And while I do trust Curt Cignetti to identify the talent that he needs to, just fill in right away in what they lost, I still haven't seen it yet, versus a team in Ohio State that's returning their starting quarterback, a team in Oregon that's returning their starting quarterback, a team in Notre Dame that is returning their starting quarterback. When you have more retention, it's a little bit easier to buy in right away versus a team that has more change, more new faces, more transfer portal pieces. But even with that, I would just do away with it altogether. Because what we're doing is ranking these teams based off of numbers and analytics and recruiting rankings and narratives that are created by people like you and me and people that know and love and talk about college football for a living. But I don't know anything. I don't know, diddly squat. I didn't know that Indiana was going to win the national championship. Heck, even at the end of the regular season, I didn't think Miami was going to be able to get to the national championship. But they did. I think it's okay to acknowledge that we just don't know because we haven't seen these teams play. I mean, Ohio State got credit on their resume last season for beating the #1 team in the country. Week 1 when Texas came to town. Well, Texas didn't end up being as good or dominant of a team at the end of the season as we thought that they would be at the beginning of the season. And that's okay. We should let the rankings be reflective of what we see on the actual football field and not by what we think will happen, not by what happened last year, and not by transfer portal rankings, recruiting rankings. It just doesn't make any sense. And I think it paints an inaccurate picture at the end of the season when it really matters, when it comes to college football playoff time. It paints an inaccurate picture of what these teams are because of the perception of what they should have been in August.
You know what I love about Olympics track and field events? I love when they have one runner start about 40 yards in front of the others, and then the next runner starts about 30 yards in front, and then the rest of the pack is back there. No, of course they don't do that. Everybody starts at the same starting line. And yet what we've got here with the poll is a situation where Ohio State is by default in the front of the pack. Oregon is in the front of the pack, and so it's going to take that much more for them to get knocked out, for them to lose. If they lose a big game early, then they're still going to only drop 2 or 3 slots. It's not the way that it's set up now. There's too much bias on the way that they are from the preseason, rather than, as you said, based on numbers, recruiting rankings, intangibles, rather than on the field results. So yeah, as long as it's a fun little exercise. It's like the college football playoffs, where when they announce those rankings in November, all of us lose our minds, all of us start fighting about it, which is exactly what they want. But it doesn't really mean anything until you get to the on-field results, and that's what we're waiting on. So for now, it's a fun exercise, but yeah, don't get your blood pressure up about it.
Just for reference, I want to look back at the 2025 preseason coaches
Oh
poll.
yes, here we go.
In the #1 slot, Texas.
Of course.
Didn't make the college football playoff. #2 slot, there was a lot of controversy last year when this team wasn't in the #1 slot, and that was Penn State. They played in the
And what happened to
Pinstripe
them?
Bowl and fired their coach. I mean, if you're going to look at where everybody thought Indiana would be, they were the 20th ranked team in the country going into last season. They ended up winning it all and pretty much bulldozed everybody en route to winning a national championship and a Heisman Trophy. Ole Miss found themselves in the college football playoff semifinals, and they were the 21st ranked team in the country. LSU, my alma mater, was the 9th ranked team in the country. They fired their coach and dug out every single stray penny they could find for every booster in Baton Rouge to fire Brian Kelly. So buyer beware with some of the preseason rankings. It is all based off of thought and belief, and every analytic that we can come up with in August, everything but what we actually see on the football field. And I just hate that the college football playoff rankings are influenced by something that's not actually what we see on the field. So do away with it. We don't need it. Everybody can start at, ground zero at the beginning of the season, and then they can emerge as the top 25 as they start to play. But we might not need a poll, but we do need college fantasy sports, and Yahoo has you covered with that. Drafts are open now, people. So scoring starts with week 1 on September 3rd. Get started now by creating a league with your crew or joining a public league to play against other fans. We will keep the college football conversation rolling coming up next, because Dan Wolken joins the show to talk what that place has to do with our favorite sport.
How do you feel about the Seahawks skill players at this point in time?
The good part, I think, if you're a Seahawks fan, what you would argue here is that outside of Cooper Kupp, everybody should, I think, have another step to take. It's not impossible that JSN does this again, but you bake in some, I'm not negative, against the player, but just a little regression there. The way you offset that is younger guys and other players step up.
Derby on the ground, a high popper. Puka comes up to get it at the 10. Williams out of the 15, the 20. Puka Williams is free. Inside the 10, 5, touchdown, Puka Williams.
When you have one of the best returners in the league, when you have one of the fastest guys in the league, he has been on the verge of returning these over and over in this game. You know how dangerous he is. You've got to have a plan.
We're going to talk about Alan Graves, who looks like a hit of a draft prospect for the Toronto Raptors. Looks sensational, man.
I thought the shot was there. You talked about the percentage, but also most of the shots were off of the catch above the break. Just a good sign in terms of his positioning.
And I think for the Toronto Raptors, a team that already has so much size, adding Alan Graves to this, it almost feels like some of those championship Raptors teams.
Walter Wilbon's on his left hip. White rolls right. White throws deep. White's got a man open. Jamon Street. Touchdown, New Mexico. First career touchdown pass for LaJames White. And New Mexico strikes on first down.
Look at him go. Calls for it. Fakes the handoff. I mean, textbook QB1 stuff.
Pretty good throw.
Really good.
The Big Ten and SEC have been running roughshod for years to protect their duopoly over college sports. Now they've done it to Capitol Hill. Joining us now is the author of that piece, our very own Dan Wolken. Dan, appreciate you for being here, as always. How did the mega conferences take over Washington, D.C.? But maybe even more importantly, how does that impact the everyday fan who sits down on their couch on a Saturday to watch their favorite team?
Well, we don't really know exactly where this is all going to go, except that this has been a 7-year-long lobbying effort on the part of the NCAA. The Big Ten and the SEC individually have spent a lot of money, millions of dollars, lobbying to try to get a bill. And what came out, in part because the SEC and the Big Ten kind of threatened to withhold their support, which would have kind of tanked the whole thing because a lot of the Congress people from these states were not going to vote for a bill that their major universities and their athletic departments didn't support. And really, it's tilted very much in favor of the Big Ten and the SEC, particularly with this cap. 48 point something million dollars will now be the new quote unquote salary cap in college sports, which all of the SEC and the Big Ten teams can afford. As far as everybody else, the Big 12, the ACC, yeah, there's some who can get there, but most can't. And so this really sort of almost enshrines the chasm between the Big Ten and the SEC and everybody else. And they were able to do it with pressure because, again, Congress was putting effort into this, but they weren't going to pass it without the Big Ten and the SEC.
Dan, this legislation is called the Save College Sports Act, and that seems nice. Save college sports. However, two-part question here. One, does college sports even need saving? And two, will this legislation, if it passes, do that? Will it save the sport?
The word save to me means that something is about to fall apart. It's about to crumble. It's about to go underwater. That's not what's happening in college sports. You look at the ratings, the ticket sales, the interest in it. College sports has been, and particularly college football, on an upward trajectory for several years. And really ever since NIL, I think people like the fact that you can get an Indiana and teams like Ole Miss who are competitive going deep into the playoffs rather than just, it's Clemson, Alabama, and Georgia again every single year like we had in the 14 playoff era. So it doesn't need to be saved. It needs to be in some ways better organized because, some of the ways in which players are moving around and signing these deals and transferring every year, it does lend itself to a chaotic environment, the legal rulings. I, in fact, was just talking to a basketball coach who we kind of closed the conversation saying, I may have more players on my roster in a month and I may not. I don't know. And it's August and school's about to start, right? So a lot of these things would probably be better managed under a different system, clearer rules. NCAA has more authority to enforce rules rather than rely on these court rulings, but it doesn't need saving. And even if this bill gets passed, who knows, right? Because they pass the bill, it goes to Trump's desk, he signs it, it goes into law, but people are still going to sue and they're going to go to court, and the legality of everything that's in the bill might end up in front of the Supreme Court. So we could still be looking at years before we know if this is even effective.
A number of labor and advocacy groups sent a letter to members of Congress asking to delay the vote on this bill until athlete interests were more adequately addressed. And frankly, I don't totally disagree. I do think that if you are lobbying for a bill to be passed into law, that maybe the people that it would affect should have at least some say into what goes into the bill. But do you think that could ultimately push us closer to collective bargaining in college sports?
Well, there's been a lot of resistance historically to the idea of collective bargaining or making athletes employees among university presidents and athletic administrators. But there are some, and really a growing number, who believe that that's the only way to truly settle a lot of these issues. And people like Danny White at Tennessee, for instance, big proponent of doing this through collective bargaining. And it is complicated. There's a lot of hurdles. You'd have to rethink a lot of things in the structure of college sports. But a lot of people believe you put in that sort of hard work and it would be worth it in the long run. And we've seen a women's basketball group out of Oregon. We've seen the Stanford sort of organizing into a players union type thing. And we'll see how much this spreads, right? And whether this catches on and whether athletes start demanding a seat at the table, because a lot of the administrators say, well, athletes don't want to be employees. They don't want to collective bargain. That's a little bit of a misleading statement because we are seeing some of these things pop up. I don't know where it's all going to go. If this Protect College Sports Act goes into law, I don't know what the future of collective bargaining efforts are going to be, but this is still, again, to get there, probably several more years, even if people ultimately decided right now that they wanted to do collective bargaining.
All right, I'm going to swerve here, and I'm going to actually talk about on-field events and on-field activities, and specifically the Notre Dame-USC rivalry coming back in 2030. We've talked here already about how fans view the sport versus how the conferences and the stakeholders view the sport. What do you make of the return of this rivalry? Fans have thought ending it was a bad decision. As a student of college football history, what does the return of this rivalry in 2030 mean for you?
Well, you always want to see games like this that were sort of annual markers of the pageantry of college sports that, Notre Dame USC played every single year, great atmospheres, really important games historically if you go back through the decades. But as with many things that have happened in college football, the evolution of conference membership has led to some difficulties trying to satisfy all of these different tentpole events. And, USC, and I don't blame them, because if you look at the way the series was structured, in years where they played at Notre Dame, it was always in October. And the years they played at SC, it was always the last game of the regular season. And now USC, they're out of the Pac-12, they're in the Big Ten. They don't want to play Notre Dame on Thanksgiving weekend because, they might have to get ready for a conference championship game. There's certainly, the college football playoff implications. They want to play it earlier. And so that was what the whole thing was. It was just about when they were going to be able to play the game. And, moving it to the start of the season, a little bit different. But I think ultimately, I like good games in week one, big games. It starts the season off with a bang. And so in years where we're going to get that at the start of the season, I think it's great for college football, and I think it's great for both schools.
I'm going to self-serve a little bit here and ask you a question about my alma mater and favorite team. Reportedly, LSU closed a deal to sell a 10% stake in its football program's future media rights to a private equity firm in exchange for an immediate cash infusion of over $100 million. Now, there have been some reports inside of the LSU athletic department that have said it's not traditional private equity, that it would be more so LSU investing into some of these other companies that would then create a new revenue stream. I don't know exactly how that differs from traditional private equity. I guess I now need a financial degree in addition to a law degree to cover college sports. What does this all mean, though? Not just for your average, everyday LSU fan, but for the future of college sports and private equity's involvement in it?
Well, a lot of schools, I shouldn't say a lot, a few schools have gone down the road with private equity. Utah signed a deal earlier this year. Michigan State has gone there as well. A lot of schools won't do it because, again, private equity, it's not a loan. They're looking for a return on investment, and a significant one in the future. And, as these media deals grow in value every 7 years or however often they sign their new deals, well, private equity, the reason they're investing is because they want a significant piece of it on the back end. They want to make a profit. And so, in exchange for immediate cash, which you feel serves your needs to be competitive immediately, you're giving up earnings in the future. And a lot of administrators and people are willing to do that because they're not going to be around, right? They make the deal now, they reap the benefits immediately, but when the bill comes due in 10, 15, 20 years, the people making those decisions are going to be at their retirement homes in Florida, right? So they're not going to have to deal with the consequences. So that's why there's been a lot of consternation over private equity being inserted into college sports. Everybody's looking for more cash right now, but the price of that cash is significant down the road. And it's a big question mark about whether it's wise to make those sort of deals.
Yeah, and speaking of organizations that have built their backs on fan goodwill and passion and proceeded to squander that, FIFA recently found itself in a whole lot of trouble, a whole lot of pushback when it floated the possibility of private equity stakes in the World Cup. Now, that had immediate pushback, and had immediate consequences for FIFA's leadership. Do you think that there could be a similar pushback coming in college sports? Obviously, perhaps not on a conference level, but on a school-by-school level, where one fan base will say, "Hey, no, that's enough. We don't want this. That's too much. That's too much on the hook for us."
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, because in Europe, they do have sort of a history of rebelling against some of these changes. We saw a couple years ago when they were going to form that European Super League. Essentially, the fans revolted and said, "No, we don't want to do this." And sort of the same thing took place with Infantino and his plan to sort of enrich himself really through a private equity investment. So I don't know that American sports fans have sort of the same constitution. People seem to be a little bit more accepting and rolling with the punches. Like, honestly, the opportunity to sort of revolt in a major impactful way probably should have happened 10 years ago when a lot of this realignment nonsense started. And, we started building these coast to coast conferences that don't make a lot of geographic sense. But American fans and American college fans have sort of been conditioned to look at the scoreboard and see dollar signs. We need more money, right? We need more money. So the more that you get in revenue as an athletic department, people for some reason care about that. In Europe, they don't. They want the tradition. They want what they want. In the United States, especially at some of these sort of mid-tier schools in the Big Ten and the SEC, all they look at is money as competition or the ability to compete more for themselves, and they don't necessarily see the downsides. Maybe they will, but it might be too late.
I just will never get over that Monster Energy patch for the Big 12. It is so bad.
That's the Monster Energy Big 12, Caroline.
Pardon me. I'm so sorry. And apologies to everybody at the Monster Energy Big 12 front offices. Busbee brought up FIFA. Let's go from one, organization rooted in goodwill and good reputation to another, Live Golf. The Live Golf CEO, Scott O'Neill, announced that an investor has, quote, signed a term sheet approved by our board that will allow the league to continue to play, but he didn't share any details about who that was, how much they invested. With that, should anybody be making some long-term plans to watch Live Golf? What is the future of this organization?
Well, has anybody been watching it up till now? And that's where, when you hear about investments in Live, and supposedly there was a $200 million potential cash infusion coming from somewhere, I think you'd have to ask whoever's providing that money, like, what are you looking at? What metrics are you seeing that would make you think that this is a viable investment? This has been the problem with Live from the beginning. Obviously, they had the ability to go out and get players to commit initially by paying them huge sums of money. But eventually, the Saudis realized that they were just throwing good money after bad because they were not able to get any traction in television ratings. They were getting some good crowds at their live events in particular markets, like Australia was doing well. There were certainly some others that were like golf-starved markets that brought out a lot of crowds. But this thing is a lemon. And I just don't understand sort of where this investment is coming from and why. And even if it does, I mean, it seems like probably just a Band-Aid, because ultimately, how is this thing going to survive?
And when you're not covering golf and you're not covering college football and college basketball, you're covering horse racing, Dan. And there was big news in the horse racing world this week. Churchill Downs and New York Racing Association have created this new 6-race series, a $5 million bonus. And it cut out the Preakness. It sliced Maryland completely out of the equation, which in turn potentially weakens or even destroys the Triple Crown. What is your sense of what this means for the Triple Crown, one of the most famous awards in sports?
Well, I think that really the most interesting part of this story, you have to go back to April when Churchill Downs purchased the intellectual property rights for the Preakness for $85 million, which was a separate transaction from the racetrack itself, Pimlico Racecourse, which got taken over by the state of Maryland for redevelopment. They are going to and are in the process of building a brand new $400 million physical plant that they want to be not just the home of the Preakness, but the everyday home of horse racing in the state of Maryland. And so I think Churchill's idea and their plan was they were going to sort of manage a lot of the monetization of the Preakness, run it at Pimlico, and sort of be partners with the state of Maryland, in which case, you know, the Triple Crown, they'd kind of own 2/3 of the Triple Crown. Maryland exercised their right of first refusal. So they did not allow Churchill to execute this transaction. They kept the intellectual property rights for themselves. Churchill Downs is a ruthless business organization, and they responded to this by teaming up with the New York Racing Association and completely cutting the state of Maryland out of the deal. And they've created this series, this 6-race series, where all the incentives are going to be toward horses, owners, trainers running in the Derby, skipping the Preakness, and then running in the Belmont. Now, that doesn't preclude them from running in the Preakness. Some might still continue to do that. Some might chase the Triple Crown. It's unknown, but we are seeing what's happened from a trend standpoint. The last 2 Kentucky Derby winners have skipped the Preakness. It's happened 3 times in the last, I think, 5 years. So that'll probably continue more often than not. It doesn't mean the Triple Crown is dead technically, but it might be dead in spirit in the sense of this is just not something people are going to pursue anymore. And the Preakness is going to continue as sort of a local Maryland event rather than a big part of horse racing history. I hope it doesn't come to that, but that's what it seems like is happening.
Yeah, it would be a shame for something that is recognizable for even the most casual of horse racing fans. You had a great column on that. You had a great column on the duopoly of the Big Ten and the SEC. You can find all of that insightful and thoughtful coverage from Dan Wolken on sports.yahoo.com. Dan, thank you so much for stopping by, my friend. We'll catch up with you soon.
Good to talk to you guys.
See you then.
Thanks, Dan. Dan Wolken, he is the absolute best. He's in our Hall of Fame. A couple of guys that are going in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Our breakdown on that coming up next.
And I had that moment there at the World Cup a few minutes before we went out and realized, oh my God, 30 plus years, all the amazing events that I've been able to be part of, including my beloved UFC, now culminates into this moment where it's the biggest sporting event and the biggest sports stage in the world. And I'm part of this? Wow.
Sharks down 10. 3rd down and 10 from the 19. Edwards steps up. Now he's in trouble. And Edwards sacked. Back at the 17. And once again, it's Devontae O'Malley. And flipped into the end zone. Touchdown. A thing of beauty. DeLaurent for Murray with a late pitch over the top, end over end, and a Pirates touchdown.
Darian Mensah was not the only player who left Duke that day to go to Miami. His best receiver, Cooper Barkate, went with him. He was the best receiver in the Ivy League at Harvard in 2024. He graduates from Harvard. He hops in the portal, goes to Duke, and has 1,100 receiving yards at Duke last year. Well, now he goes to Miami.
Harvard to Miami. How can you not love this sport right now? This is fantastic.
Still Barnes in there. No Jared Ware on this drive yet. Roberts against the blitz. Goes to the end zone for Keon Williams. Easy as you like. 16-yard touchdown.
There's Keon Williams. Tried to go to him in the last drive on that 4th down play to the end zone. Good defense by Orlando, but that time able to shake free to the corner.
Adam Vinatieri had a career worth 2 gold jackets. So not only do we need a bigger boat, Adam Vinatieri is going to need a bigger jacket as he will be enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame upcoming this Saturday, noon Eastern on the NFL Network. So that brings us to what we're doing here on this show this week. We're breaking down a Hall of Famer, a different Hall of Famer each day of the week of who will be enshrined forever in Canton coming up on Saturday. And of course, Hall of Fame game coming up on Thursday. We get real life football. It's happening. It's coming. What Adam Vinatieri moment? I mean, I would venture to say the greatest kicker of all time. What moment stands out to you, Busbee, as a fond Vinatieri moment?
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm still waiting on my gold jacket that y'all promised me. Maybe the UPS man has not come yet. Maybe I haven't gotten a knock on the door yet. But
it's above my pay grade.
Kill time, yeah, exactly. In order to kill time until that gets here, Vinatieri had 29 game winners. He had 14 kicks on the final play of the game. He was just unstoppable in those late game moments. I'm going all the way back to Super Bowl 36. He broke a tie with the Rams, 48-yard kick back in 2002. First Super Bowl win for a guy by the name of Tom Brady, and things got better for the Patriots from then going forward. That is one to hang your hat on. That's a Hall of Fame kick all by itself.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, and that's kind of why we said that he deserves multiple gold jackets, because he's had multiple Hall of Fame careers and multiple Hall of Fame moments. I mean, you think about the Snow Bowl, 2001 divisional round of the playoffs, 45-yard field goal in snow. I mean, take notes, Sean Payton. You absolutely can kick field goals in the snow, and maybe that would have had a different tune in the AFC Championship game this past year. You also look at Super Bowl, what was that, Super Bowl 38 in 2004. 41-yarder to win it with 4 seconds left to take down the Carolina Panthers. So, great kickers are great, but clutch time kickers that you can go to in the final few seconds of the biggest games of your season, I mean, that's just a different level of special, and there's no doubt that that's exactly what Adam Vinatieri was.
Yeah, I've talked to several kickers because I'm like you. I wonder about what is it like to be out there knowing that the entire season rests on your shoulders or on your foot, as the case may be. And they're wired differently than we are. I talked to Morton Anderson, who also has so many game-winning kicks. And he once told me, he's like, it doesn't bother me. That's what I do. I know that I can do it. I know that I'm better than anyone else in the stadium at doing this thing. So yeah, Vinatieri was wired differently than the rest of us, and he made it pay off.
Yeah. That's the kind of pressure I don't think I could deal with is, hey, Super Bowl's on the line. We need you to hit a 40-plus yarder. Are you cool with that? I'd be like, no, of course not. Absolutely. That's why I do not have a career as a professional kicker. That's a long way. As we said, Adam Vinatieri probably deserves multiple gold jackets. Who else, whether it's in football and sports in general, has had multiple Hall of Fame careers, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, you got to go. I go with Tiger Woods. I mean, even though his high period has faded further and further in the distance now, but the guy had multiple. You could divide it up. He had multiple Hall of Fame level careers. For golf's standard for reaching their Hall of Fame is a little bit lower than some other sports. You just have to win a certain number of tournaments. He did that multiple times over. Sadly, I mean, one of the tough things about Tiger is that his major achievements have faded further in the past. But yeah, when he was good, he was as good as anybody that's ever played the game and one of the best in all of sports in American history.
I think you also have to add Tom Brady into the mix.
Oh,
Speaking
yes.
of great Patriots, great New England Patriots. I don't know how many Hall of Fame careers Tom Brady has had, but it's at least two.
Yes.
I mean, to win a Super Bowl with two different franchises, and even after when he went to Tampa Bay, I think we all looked around and were like, Tampa Bay, what? Like, okay, sure, if you're sure about that, not going there to win anything substantial, and there he is winning a Super Bowl with the Bucks. He's certainly, just his career alone with the Patriots is probably deserving of multiple gold jackets. Stepping outside of the realms of football, though, I mean, LeBron James has had multiple Hall of Fame careers. Michael Jordan had multiple Hall of Fame careers. It's the reason why those two are viewed in tandem as the greatest to ever do it. Bo Jackson could probably be in not just multiple Hall of Fames for his own sport, but Bo Jackson could be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, people of a certain age like me remember Bo and Deion Sanders, and we lament the loss of the two-sport athletes. Yeah, so it's too bad that we don't have any two-sport athletes anymore, but we had those for a brief moment.
Adam will also be joined by four other Hall of Famers. You get 49ers legend Roger Craig, who was a huge part of the Bill Walsh, the Montana, the Young, the Jerry Rice dynasty there in San Francisco. What was your reaction when you saw that Roger Craig was finally getting his due and will be enshrined forever in Canton?
Yeah, two reactions to this. First of all, for Roger Craig, obviously it's well-deserved. The debut member of the 1,000 Club, 1,000 receiving yards, 1,000 rushing yards. He absolutely deserved it. He was an essential part of those 49ers teams. But it brings up the thing that is the most maddening about Hall of Fames to me, where you have players that you know are deserving, but we just keep making them wait again and again and again. Roger Craig is 66 now. He deserved to be enjoying this. He deserved to be wearing that gold jacket out for the last 20-some, 30-some years. Why hold the flowers from these guys when we know that they are capable of doing it? They know that they are capable of earning it. They've already put the numbers on the field. I mean, there are numerous examples, baseball players enshrined on their 15th attempt. It's not like they added their numbers to their ledger in those intervening 14 years. So yeah, if a player is eligible early on, he should go in early on. No more of this waiting for the Veterans Committee. Make the call, let them in.
I'm with you 1000%. It was the same kind of argument last year when Bill Belichick was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Who in their right mind can justify Bill Belichick, even with how bad things were at North Carolina last year, even with how non-Bill Belichick, the Bill Belichick has been acting over the last several years? You cannot tell me that Bill Belichick is not deserving of being a first ballot Hall of Famer. He is one of the greatest, if not the greatest coaches to ever coach in the National Football League. With the Super Bowls that he won with the Patriots, the Super Bowl he won as a defensive coordinator of the New York Giants. I mean, he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, but for whatever politics or whatever game there was of, well, we have to vote this guy in this year because if he doesn't get voted in this year, he won't be voted in next year, and Bill will be voted in next year. No more of that. No more of those games. No more of the strategy of when and how guys get inducted in. Is he or is he not a Hall of Famer? Does he or does he not deserve to be enshrined in their respective Hall of Fames forever? If the answer is yes, then you should put them in. But there is no doubt that these 5 men that will be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame absolutely deserve it. And for some of them, it is very much so overdue. So we'll continue looking at some of these Hall of Famers throughout the rest of the week. For Jay Busbee, I am Caroline Fenton. Busbee, it's a blast as always.
Absolutely, my friend.
We'll be back right here tomorrow morning. Keep it right here on the Yahoo Sports Network. We'll see you tomorrow on Yahoo Sports Daily.